All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. We're going to start off with some announcements, then we'll follow that up with our recommended reading. It's a really good one tonight. Our affirmation of the day, then we'll do the introductions and victories, followed by the audiobook excerpt from Chapter 7 of my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. We'll come back and have our topic discussion. We'll take a break at about 8:15 or so, and then we'll come back, work on the assignment for tonight, and then wrap it up by 9 o'clock. A reminder that today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to stop your video and mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard on the recording. Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, author-signed paperbacks, first edition, only a few copies left. Save 20% by using the discount code WORKSHOP20 at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/book. And while you're there, check out my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes, the ultimate, penultimate New York City photo book, collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. We each have our own unique take on the landmarks and skylines that make the Big Apple such a great place to be. So check it out, available on my website, BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore, $16.95. I'll sign that for you as well. And possibly the last week that the audiobook will be available for pre-order at $9.99. This is the second edition author-read audiobook. It is close to 10 hours long, and it comes with a full money-back guarantee. If you don't love it, you just let me know, and I'll send you your money back. But I know you're going to love it. Check it out at BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. While you're there, check out some merch, hats and t-shirts. Save 20% by using the discount code MERCH20 at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. I also have my original art and photography. These are my original landscape, cityscape, and abstract images. They are professionally framed, gallery-wrapped canvas prints available at BeBiggerToday.com/art-photography. And here is a little commercial for you guys. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. So check those out. Those are really, really nice, professionally framed prints. I also have some more merch for you guys. This is my refrigerator magnets, my original photos on refrigerator magnets, high quality, beautiful, one-of-a-kind images from yours truly. They're also available on my website at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. And I have a new podcast up that you guys can check out. It's the What's the Difference podcast from the US-UK network. I did this about a month ago, had a great conversation with Tom and David, about 90 minutes. Oh no, actually it's a little less than that. I think it's about an hour. So check it out. Go to my website, BeBiggerToday.com, click on this image on the homepage, and it will take you to the YouTube version of the podcast. Check it out. Let me know what you think of that. And I'm available for one-on-one coaching and or corporate consulting. If you are a creative person, a photographer or a writer or an artist, or if you have a business and would like me to come in and speak to your management team, your sales team on how they can be bigger than they think they are, please reach out to me through the website at BeBiggerToday.com and we'll set that up. Finally, I am accepting donations. I'm looking for support to continue to offer the workshop at no charge. and keep it open to everyone who wishes to attend. We do have a suggested donation of $5 per week or $20 per month. You can send your contribution directly to me at paypal.me/Peter Alessandria. And thank you guys so much for your support. All right, so let's jump right into the workshop tonight with our recommended reading. Tonight's recommended reading is Facing Codependence, what it is, where it comes from, and how it sabotages our lives. This book was written by Pia Mellody back in 2003. It's actually a great, great book, and it has a companion workshop, a workbook, that I highly recommend as well. Now, it fits in perfectly with what we're going to be discussing tonight. We're going to be talking about boundaries. And honestly, a lot of what I've learned about boundaries has come from reading Pia Mellody's books, doing her workbook. I actually attended a week-long workshop with her in Arizona back in the day, which was great. And so this is a really, really important book, in my opinion, a very powerful book. If you are wondering about the issue of codependency, what it is, how it affects our lives, and how to overcome it, this book is a great resource. So I highly recommend this. I'll read you the publisher's blurb on this. In Facing Codependence, Pia Mellody traces the origins of codependence back to childhood and a wide range of unhealthy parenting that may have included emotional and physical neglect or abuse. Utilizing concepts such as the precious child and the 5 core symptoms of codependence, along with the 12-step process used by Codependence Anonymous, Pia provides strategies and insights for overcoming the fundamental problem of codependence, a lack of healthy dependence on oneself, along with an appropriate interdependence with others. So this is really important. So overcoming codependency is not about being completely anti-dependent on other people. The problem with many of us as codependents is an over-dependency on other people. So we look to other people, for instance, for cues on whether or not we're valuable and lovable. We look to other people for their opinion on our worth and value. We are not familiar, or we're not in touch with our own wants and needs, so we ask other people what they want or what they need, and then we tailor our behavior to meet those needs instead of meeting our own. So the list goes on and on. In fact, we're going to look at the core symptoms here, the 5 core symptoms, according to Pia Mellody, that accompany codependence. Her 5 symptoms are, number 1 is a poor self-esteem, which include feelings of shame and unworthiness. Number 2 is a lack of healthy boundaries, which fits in with what we're going to be discussing tonight. Number 3, uncertainty regarding our own reality. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Number 4 is trouble identifying wants and needs. And 5, difficulty with moderation. And moderation can be substances, moderation can be emotional moderation. You know, we don't know how to moderate our feelings, we don't know how to moderate our communications with other people. We do things to an excess, or not at all. We could be anorexic, or we could be the other end of the other extreme as well in different areas of our lives. And so Pia has a whole discussion in there about how to address each of these, how to address these core symptoms. Now, if you do go to the coda.org website, they have a list of characteristics that goes way beyond these 5 core symptoms. But this might be, this is good for people who just want to get started, again, looking at this issue of codependency, seeing if they kind of fit into the scheme at all, to begin to understand what some of the characteristics and symptoms are of codependency. So tonight we are going to talk about, as I said, we are going to talk about boundaries tonight, actually for the next 3 weeks, because I think boundaries is one of the most important subjects that we can discuss, that we can cover in the workshop. We've already talked a little bit about low self-esteem, poor self-esteem, feeling unworthy, feeling unlovable. Trouble identifying wants and needs. I'm not sure we're going to get into that before the end of this go-round on the workshop, or the difficulty with moderation. And then just very briefly, regarding our own reality, it's very hard for us to, as codependents, it can be difficult to trust our own sense of what's true or what's not true, or what's real or what's not real in our lives. And it could be as simple as somebody saying, oh, you shouldn't feel that way, or you don't know what you want, or you don't know how you feel. And us really not being able to question that or to transcend that. And we look to cues outside of us to get a sense of what's true for us, what's true for us, what our reality is with regard to different issues in our lives. It's not having a sense of self, not having a sense of our own space or place in the world. We're constantly looking for cues outside of ourselves to come to a conclusion about what something means, about what's true and what's untrue. And of course, if we're being raised in a family where there's addiction or alcoholism, it's hard for us to discern what the reality really is. I'm not going to say more than that, but if you resonate with that at all, again, I highly recommend this book, Facing Codependence by Pia Mellody, obviously available online. You can check out her website, piamellody.com. It's actually a pretty old website. It looks like it hasn't been updated in many, many years. But you can order the book off Amazon. You can get the books anywhere you get books, audiobooks. And Pia is also a senior fellow at the Meadows, which is a recovery institute in Arizona. And actually, that's where I did the workshop with her many years ago. Spent a week with her. Wonderful woman. This book was life-changing for me. So I highly recommend it if you have any curiosity, or if you want to find out more about codependency and how that might apply. Take a look at this book. All right, so the affirmation of the day. Again, this is not actually an affirmation. This comes from the Abraham Hicks daily email blast that I get. This popped up a couple weeks ago and I saved it. So it's not really an affirmation, but I wanted to bring this to your attention because for me, this is, it's really something to think about. So according to Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, and Abraham, worrying is using our imagination to create something we don't want. Now, I've been talking since day one, I've been talking about the power of thought, the power of belief, the power of the mind to create our reality. And this falls in line with that. And Abraham Hicks in particular, something that's always stuck with me is they say, you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Now, this is really important. This means that whatever we give our mental attention to, we're going to create more of in our lives. We're going to manifest more of that. We're going to attract more of that into our lives. So, and this is true even if something we think we don't want, that we're complaining about, that we're fighting against. Actually, anytime we fight against anything, we're giving it our attention. And whatever we give our attention to, whether we want it or not, will grow in our experience. We'll attract more of that. We're in essence saying yes to something, even though in our mind we're saying no because we're complaining about it, we don't want that, get out of here, get out of my life. But by giving our focus, see, here's a very important spiritual principle. I talked about this a little bit in chapter 5. In the metaphysical, in the realm of, just beyond what we experience in the physical, there's a principle, and the principle is attention equals intention. So whatever we give our attention to, we're intending to bring into manifestation. We're intending to bring into our lives, to create more of that in our experience. So you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Worrying about something is using our imagination in a negative way. It's negative affirmations. It becomes the point of focus, the point of attraction, and we literally draw to us that which we think we don't want because we're giving it our energy. Think about it this way. If you have a house plant, the more attention you give that plant, the more water, the more plant food, the more it's going to grow. It's the same with the things that we experience in the world and in our mind. We feed them. Every time we give a problem our attention, we're feeding it. We're giving it more life force. We're giving it more energy. Now you may say, well, I got some real problems in my life. I mean, I have to pay them some attention. And the suggestion is to focus on the solution, not to focus on the problem. Focus on where you want to be instead of where you are. Focus on the result that you want to create rather than coming at it from a place of negative energy of being afraid of something or worrying about something or being concerned about something or fighting against something or pushing something away from you. Focus on the solution. Come up with a positive outcome and focus on that. Give that your mental attention. So if you're having financial problems, don't look at your bank account every day and say, my God, I'm broke. Instead, take out a piece of paper or create something on your phone or online someplace that's a positive reaffirming affirmation that I am bringing wealth to me. I am creating income. I have the capacity to earn more money. I have the skills, the training, or I can get the skills, I can get the training that can create more wealth in my life. So instead of focusing on the negative and giving that our attention, we want to create something positive and give that our attention. And, quite literally, when we worry about something, we're using the creative power of our mind to create something that we don't want. So we want to be aware of that. So you get what you think about whether you want it or not, and worrying is using your imagination to create something you don't want. All right, so this is the portion of the workshop where it's an opportunity for people to introduce themselves if they're new, or to share a victory or celebration from the past week. So if you'd like to say hello or share a victory, please unmute yourself and say hi.
Hi, Peter. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Dee Dee.
Hi. I listened to the meditation download, the 15-minute meditation that's done so expertly, and I love it. I love it. And I noticed, so here's my victory. I noticed that I have zero resistance to each one of those affirmations. Like, I believe those affirmations and I already own those affirmations. So I love that for me. And I wonder, I don't think that would necessarily be everybody's experience when they're listening to those. I think those are custom affirmations that you created for yourself, for your own mastery. So I just thought I'd mention that and see maybe if you want to talk about it. I did watch your podcast, and that was curious. I didn't watch the end, but it was I think it's great to have two people interviewing you. How fun was that? And they seem to be really interested in your offerings. So I think I'm just really glad to be here because I've noticed I have like a low grade fundamental, kind of like below the surface anger, frustration going on. I know I fall under the category of needing the Pia Melody healing. And although I feel like the forgiveness process is working me pretty well, I will stay tuned for the boundaries because that's probably what I need right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee Dee. Great. I'm glad you're enjoying the affirmation meditation. Again, for people who don't know, I've created a 15-minute affirmation meditation, taking some of the sample affirmations from the second edition. The second edition of the book, I included a list of sample affirmations. I guess some could be specific to me. I'm coming from my own reference point. I've made about 5 very specific ones just for me personally. So I actually look at the list of the affirmations, and what you're listening to is more general than specific. But people can decide whether or not they speak to them. You can certainly make your own, if there's, and I do recommend this actually, have a list of affirmations that are fine-tuned or custom-tuned to your situation, and then use that as a reference. You don't have to put them to music or record them. You could just have them on your phone. So when the going gets tough, you pull out your phone, you could start reading them out loud or just remind yourself about them. As I said, there's going to probably be 2 more parts from the sample affirmations, 2 more meditations, affirmation meditations. So, and then, as I say in chapter 2, I think it is in the book, in order for our affirmations to be effective, they have to be believable. So if what I'm saying is a stretch, we want to be conscious of that, because what happens is our conscious mind can derail the process. If the affirmation is, I'm healthy, and you got all kinds of health problems, that might be too much of a stretch, and your mind can kind of derail you on that. So you want to be conscious of that. My suggestion is come up with an affirmation of your own that is more believable, that's more tempered to your situation. In the second edition, I also mentioned that what may be more effective in those situations is, instead of I am healthy or I am wealthy or I have this kind of relationship or that kind of income or that kind of job, is just to use one-word affirmations. So a word like success, and then just repeat that word over and over throughout the day. Success, success, or wealth, or abundance, or loving relationships. So it's not really saying I am that or I have that. It's just simply opening the mind to because I think what many of us do, I speak for myself, I focus so much on the negative all day long that I'm kind of reaffirming the negative, what I don't have, or what I'm not, or what I feel like I'm not, as opposed to something more positive. But if it's too positive, it's difficult to accept, it's difficult to believe. So just using a one-word affirmation might be a way around that. So either come up with your own in terms of what's believable to you or not, or try this one-word technique. And remember, the affirmations, so our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience. The affirmations are supposed to be positive thoughts, positive mental activity that raises our emotional state. We want to change our state. Again, I always quote Tony Robbins. He talks about the fact that you can never have a successful life if you're in a negative emotional state. If you're depressed, if you're sad, if you're worried, if you're fearful, you cannot experience success in your life. So what we want to do is raise our mental state to increase our emotional state, because when our feelings are positive, then our words and actions are positive, and when our words and actions are positive, our outcomes are positive. So again, we're not saying affirmations, we're not sitting, meditating, saying affirmations, and then stuff is just magically appearing in the living room, although that is possible, but most of us are not there yet. So the way I like to talk about affirmations is what we're trying to do is elevate our emotional state, positive feelings, positive words and actions, positive outcomes. Because for most of us, the way we create in this realm, the physical realm, is by taking action. Got to do stuff, got to send out that resume, or got to, whatever. We got to take action to get things going. So if we have negative thoughts and negative feelings, we're going to have negative actions, or worse, we're not going to do anything. We're going to sit home either being afraid of rejection or criticism, or feeling sorry for ourselves, or being jealous and envious of people who are out there having a successful life. So we want to use the affirmations to manipulate the thought process, to increase, to elevate our feelings, and then to experience positive results from that. Make sense, Didi?
Totally great. And that, I just have to say, the quality is exquisite, and they're I can't wait to get my hands on the rest of them. Thanks, Peter.
Great. Thank you, Didi. And just to let you know, they are available for download now. So I switched it so you can actually download it to your phone or your computer, so you don't have to log in or just go to the website every time to hear it. Anybody else want to say hi or have a question or have a victory to share? Barbara?
Microphone. Hi. It's funny. I was going to talk about the same thing. I did not have a chance to go get earbuds or whatever, but and then to my surprise, I see it on my phone. You sent it, the meditation. So I listened to it. You just sent it yesterday, I think. So I listened to it last night, and I just wanted to say how wonderful it was. It really is. I understand the two-part, that you said, you hear one and then the other, and that might help. But, well, this was my first time. And listening to it, giving it time for 15 minutes was like you just said, it was just, it's a way of filling yourself up again with, positive affirmations. So, and then hopefully take that with you. I feel like too bad I can't have 24 hours of it in my head. I guess that would help me right now, but you can only take what you have. So that 15 minutes of positive affirmations, hearing it, I'm not saying hearing you, but hearing it instead of, I guess, saying it yourself is, because you listen to the song, we've listened to the song forever, and it's a great song. And times during the day, when I just need it, it's funny, the song will pop up, right? So I'm sure the same thing is going to happen with this affirmation, with these meditations. When you're in some kind of, I don't know when, but right, it happens to you too, that all of a sudden the song will come into your head and you start singing it. So not singing it, but hearing it. So thank you, Peter. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing you did to give to people. I guess it helps you, so it'll help me.
Yeah, I mean, I that's, my thing is, what works for me, I'm hoping it will work for other people. So you can listen to it. I mean, I listen to them over and over. I always try to listen before I go to bed, like the last half hour, maybe hour, I listen.
That's when I did it, Bacad. Yeah.
And, if you need a break in the middle of the day, sometimes even if I'm doing something on the computer, if I don't have to use my ears for something, I'll put my earbuds in and I'll listen, I'll do a 15 or 20-minute affirmation meditation that way too. It is reprogramming, and you do know it's working when it pops into your head in the middle of the day. I mean, that's actually a really good sign. So, and the more you listen to it, the more it will become part of your default.
Okay, that's what I need, deprogramming and programming to be, there is no victories. I had a day that was, I don't know, it's my usual day, but it's not a day from hell. You don't say that anymore. But it was a tough day or a challenging day. But I got through it. And I start my day out always saying, I've got this, I can do this, and that's right, from you or from what we've gotten. So I do start my, job with that. And it has helped. And it's funny because I can't even think back at when I wasn't doing this and how I was, because I guess I had to get through my day also, and I didn't blow up and I didn't go crazy. Maybe I did when I came home. But, I just knew that I said, I got this, and I went through the day, and it was really challenging. And that's it. That's the victory. It is what it is. And like you said, I'll either settle with it or I have to pursue something that makes me a little more happy.
Well, listen, I got to say, I think just having the presence of mind to reaffirm first thing in the morning or whenever, when you get to the job or whatever, I got this, I can handle this. This is going to be okay. I'll figure it out. That's that's huge. I mean, it
is huge. It's huge for me. Yes.
That's worth its weight.
Right.
I love that.
Think when I was talking to you all the time, I know you were always saying to me, Barbara, you're saying you can't do it. You can't do it. Did you notice that I don't say that as much anymore?
I did notice that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm noticing it. So, yeah, because I was talking to you and all I would say is, I can't. And I don't say that anymore. So that's great.
That's huge. That's a celebration. That's woohoo.
That's the victory. Okay.
That's a victory. I love it.
Right. Okay. So do I.
Well, because remember, I mean, it's like, we're creating our lives whether we know it or not. Again, Abraham Hicks, they talk about creating consciously or by default. And default is all the old tapes that play in our heads all day long about what we can't do, about we're not good enough, we don't have what it takes, they're not going to like us, this is going to be painful, I'm going to be rejected, whatever, whatever the story is. And we have to take, I'm suggesting, for me at least, I have to start to take responsibility and reprogram that stuff and do it consciously and deliberately in a way that really does, I start to see different results. That's how you know it's working. And you're having that. I would give myself more credit. I mean, you're doing really good.
Okay. So that's next week. More credit.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome.
Cynthia, you want to go?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My victory this week is that I have been continuing to get tutoring for some computer skill sets that I was very reticent to acquire. One of them being Excel and all those little boxes to put things in. And I still am learning, but it really is a victory that I'm not getting hysterical. I'm not screaming at the teacher. I'm not doing any of those things that I have done previously when dealing with Excel. I'm not lying on the floor crying disconsolately. So I'm learning some technical skills that I would like to acquire, and little by little, I'm practicing them and learning them. And that is a huge, huge victory. So thank you.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Cynthia. Yeah, it took me a while to learn Excel too. And, I think that's natural for many of us, at least when it comes to learning something new, because when I, again, I'll speak for myself, there were consequences. If I didn't know how to do something and if I didn't do it the right way, there were consequences in my childhood. And, that creates resistance, that creates fear. It's almost like I'd rather not even try than face the consequences of doing something wrong, of making a mistake. So for me, at least, that's what's underneath all of that. It's not even just the technical stuff, because things can be confusing or challenging or whatever on a technical level. But the thing is, I raise the stakes. It's like I can't screw this up because there's going to be consequences. There's going to be punishment. There's going to be shaming. There's going to be some negative fallout from that. And I don't think I can handle that. Now, again, it's only because I still see myself most days as that little 5-year-old kid who really had no recourse, had no way to protect himself in those situations. So that's why I always say, who do you think you are? How do you see yourself? Most important question we can ask ourselves. Because as long as I'm walking around thinking I'm still that 5-year-old kid, it's going to be very difficult to take healthy risks, to learn new things, to meet new people, because that kid, he couldn't handle all of that. So that's great. Thank you, Cynthia. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so let's jump back in because it's almost time for the break and we haven't even started yet. So we're working on chapter 7 tonight. We're going to talk about boundaries tonight and the next 2 weeks, so 3 weeks in total. Again, I think for me at least, this is one of the most important topics in the book. It's one of the most important topics for life. And as always, I'm a work in progress, and I've been working on this stuff for 25 years. So it takes a little time, in my experience. So let's plunge ahead. We're going to listen to the audiobook. It's about 7 minutes, and then when we come back, I have some slides, we have some discussion, we'll go from there.
Better living through boundaries. We said previously our common motivation with our fellow man is to do what we think we need to do to take care of ourselves in any given situation. If using anger, judgment, blame, attack, and so on isn't serving us, then we'll need to find another way. That other way is healthy boundaries. I'll share some of the things I've learned about boundaries over the years, but for anyone who's interested in an in-depth discussion of this topic, I highly recommend the book Facing Codependence by Pia Mellody. Let's start by looking at what boundaries are. Boundaries are dividing lines between things. In this case, they're dividing lines between ourselves and other people. You can visualize them as physical barriers, such as fences, though I prefer to think of them more as rules or guidelines. The first thing to remember is, healthy boundaries are the primary way we take care of ourselves in our relationships with others. When used properly, they can promote communication, reduce stress, foster intimacy, and avoid violent confrontations between people. There are 5 main types of boundaries that I've used in my own life. Other people may prefer less or more. These are 1. Physical boundaries, 2. Temporal time boundaries, 3. Verbal boundaries, 4. Mental boundaries, and 5. Emotional boundaries. There's a lot of overlap between these 5 types, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to which type you use. The rule in terms of choosing a boundary is what's needed in order to see ourselves as safe and or comfortable in specific situations or with specific people. While our boundaries may change over time, it's important to keep in mind that when we modify things, it could be a source of confusion and or tension with others. Some people may not like when we change the rules governing the relationship. In terms of setting a boundary, we don't have to explain, defend, or justify our boundaries to anyone if we choose not to. While we may decide to negotiate with others about what might work for both people in a given situation, ultimately we have to choose boundaries that work for us. This is because taking care of ourselves in all situations and with all people is our responsibility. As we'll discuss later, when we fail to do this, resentment, or worse, is bound to follow. Here are a few examples of boundaries I've used over the years. 1. Physical. Limited physical contact. For instance, no touch namaste greeting with strangers, open hugs and maybe kissing on the cheek with family or close friends, no lip kissing with non-intimate partners. Avoid certain types of people, e.g. heavy drinkers, drug users, and/or places, e.g. loud parties, bars, or restaurants. I only eat certain types of foods. I don't lend money, clothing, or camera equipment to others. No driving with someone when they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. 2. Temporal. Visits with certain people are limited to a certain period of time and/or times of day. I may alter this if it's a special occasion and other people are with me. Phone/video calls limited to a certain number of minutes with certain people. I don't have to respond to texts or emails immediately. Depending on the tone/content, I may wait several hours or days to respond to allow things to cool down. 3. Verbal. No unnecessary yelling, screaming, name-calling. No sarcastic, blaming, shaming remarks. No gossip, character assassination, or tattling on others. I will leave the conversation and/or premises if these rules are broken. 4. Mental. My mental activity is private. I will not feel compelled to explain or defend my decisions to anyone unless I choose to. I will ask for clarity about things I don't understand. I never make decisions or enter into agreements under duress. I don't have to accept another person's idea of who I am. 5. Emotional. Avoid people when they're angry or emotionally volatile. If someone has violent outbursts, such as slamming doors or cabinets or breaking things, I will leave the premises. I'm accountable for my own behaviors, but will not take responsibility for someone else's feelings. I will be empathetic, but will not enmesh with or emotionally caretake another adult. It should be obvious that boundaries primarily serve to protect us, but as Pia Melody points out, they can also serve to contain us. That is, they keep us from infringing on another's physical, temporal, emotional, verbal, or mental space. As an example, I always try to be cognizant of how much of someone else's time I'm taking when I meet with them, online, in person, or on the phone. I also usually try to be conscious of my emotional and/or verbal temperament when I drive with others in my vehicle, and so on. It's difficult and probably pretty unreasonable to expect others to contain themselves with us when we don't contain ourselves with them. Many people think of boundaries as walls, rigid and impermeable. They can be, depending on the situation, but for me, healthy boundaries are usually both flexible and permeable. For instance, if I have a time boundary with respect to the length of a phone call with a particular person, I don't just hang up at the end of so many minutes. I may choose to extend or curtail the call depending on its tone and content. With respect to all my boundaries, I'm responsible for monitoring the situation to make sure that continued interaction with the other person is both safe and healthy. In terms of permeability, healthy boundaries let information pass in and out. When the information comes in, we use our mental faculties to assess whether it's true or safe for us. As an example, let's say you have a no gossip personal boundary. One day your boss calls you into his office to discuss your latest expense report. He ended up sending you back to Vegas after all. During the conversation, he gives you important information about a potential job opening in another division, but he also gossips about a female coworker. You thank him for the division job info, but you also let him know that you don't feel comfortable talking about others when they're not present. In that situation, you assessed all the incoming data and accepted what was safe and relevant and rejected what was not. You respected your own boundary, and you also respected your boss by speaking calmly and professionally about what was okay and not okay for you. At the end of the day, it's up to us to decide what we let into our bodies, hearts, and minds.
All right, so that's the audiobook for tonight. And so I'm going to jump right in because we're running behind schedule a little bit here. So let's look at the first slide for tonight. So what are boundaries? Again, as you heard in the audiobook, they're dividing lines between things, in this case between people. I generally think of boundaries as rules or guidelines governing our behavior in relationships. So, and they serve to both protect us but also to contain us. And that was really, really interesting for me when I first learned about that. This idea that, the primary purpose of having a boundary with another person or in particular situations is to protect us, take care of ourselves from something that's unwanted, potentially harmful, and all of that. But they also, healthy boundaries also contain us, because as I said again in the audiobook tonight, it's kind of unreasonable to expect other people to contain themselves around us when we don't contain ourselves around them. So if we're emotionally out of control, verbally abusive, things like that, physically lacking moderation or infringing on somebody else's space, looking at their phone, their privacy, their emails, privacy, stuff like that. Healthy boundaries contain us from infringing on somebody else, just like they contain other people from infringing on us. So it's really important to keep that in mind. So they primarily serve to protect us, but they also contain us. And then in terms of rules or guidelines, so this is where it begins, this is why I always say adults negotiate. Children in particular, 5-year-olds, they fight a lot, yell and scream, and they grab and they wrestle and all of that. Adults, we have to learn how to negotiate. If we have an ongoing relationship with somebody, we want to have a way to communicate our needs, to communicate what works for us versus what doesn't work for us in certain situations. So the guidelines, the rules, it even helps in some cases to write them down. I was a lawyer for 20 years, and I got to see over and over and over again the value of having a written agreement between people. Obviously, it's important in business, but again, in the second edition of the book, I've included a family contract. So it's a contract, an agreement between a parent or parents and children, in this case, teenagers. Because when stuff is written down, see, if we're negotiating, if we're coming up with rules or guidelines for our relationship, and we don't, you're going to hear what you want to hear, and I'm going to hear what I want to hear, and they're not necessarily going to match up, when the stuff hits the fan. So, we have a subjective interpretation of events and things like that. So it's very helpful to memorialize that. Somehow write it down, put it in a, I guess you could record it if you really wanted to, but, something in writing where you have a meeting of the minds. So this was a big deal when I took contract law in law school. An agreement represents a meeting of the minds. Two minds come together, two people, and there's a meeting, there's a common ground, there's agreement. Now, again, the thing, as I said in the audiobook tonight, is negotiations notwithstanding, ultimately our boundaries have to be, they have to serve us. They have to accomplish the goal that we have for them. So if it is, protection, if it is, what's going to work for us in a family situation, in a work situation, things like that, we have to come to some kind of an understanding that's going to address those needs. Because if I don't take care of myself, there's only one place that it's going to go, and that's resentment. And what I found for me, my definition, we talked about this in chapter 6, my definition of resentment is that I have not done what I needed to do to take care of myself in that situation, and now the anger that I think I feel towards them is misdirected anger that I feel towards myself, because I did not take care of myself in that situation. Now, as an adult, I have to take care of myself. I can't expect somebody else to read my mind, or somebody else to automatically assume my best interests over their own. It ain't gonna happen. I'm well into middle age, and other than my mother at times when I was a kid, and my dad, my parents and all that, most people are looking out for themselves. And so, we have to be part of that pack. We have to be part of the group that look out for themselves. It doesn't have to be abusive. It doesn't have to be aggressive. We don't have to be overreaching. We don't have to take advantage of other people. But we also don't want to put ourselves at a disadvantage. All right, so dividing lines between things, they're rules or guidelines, and they serve to both protect and contain us. Now, as I kind of alluded to a few times already, healthy boundaries are the primary way we take care of ourselves in our relationships with others. Now, again, this is where a lot of problems crop up in relationships, because we don't have healthy boundaries, so we have to resort to plan B, which is usually some kind of anger or manipulation or control or shaming or blaming or scapegoating or physical or verbal abuse. Those are the things we default to when we don't know how to use healthy boundaries to take care of ourselves. So we go to what many people go to as their default, because they don't know another way, because nobody ever taught them, modeled for them what healthy boundaries look like. So what we're doing now is we're talking about moving from that realm into a more healthy way of relating to other people. So when used properly, our boundaries can promote communication, reduce stress, foster intimacy, and avoid violent confrontations between people. I mean, this is what we're talking about here. This is the power of having healthy boundaries in our relationships. So again, as I mentioned in the reading tonight, in the audiobook, so there are 5 main types of boundaries. Some people actually have more, some people have less. I think Pia Melody talks about 3 primary boundaries. There's a lot of overlap between them, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to which type you use. But the 5 that I have used in my own life are 1, physical boundaries, 2, temporal or time boundaries, which is actually a form of a physical boundary, 3, verbal boundaries, 4, mental boundaries, and 5, emotional boundaries. Now, I gave some examples in the audiobook tonight, but just really quick, a physical boundary is just that. It's any kind of a physical barrier or distance between you and another person. And I wrote a lot of this before COVID, before the pandemic, when it was much more common to greet people, embracing people, shaking hands, and all of that. Obviously, there's less of that going on now. But a physical boundary is, whether or not we hug somebody or allow somebody to hug us. A physical boundary is who we allow into our home, who we allow into our car, into our office. It's some kind of physical separation between us and another person or a group of people. Temporal boundaries. So this has been very, very helpful for me, is to use time as a way to take care of myself. So again, as I mentioned in the audiobook tonight, I have certain boundaries around how much time I spend with certain people, when I visit with certain people or allow them to visit me, when I call them or when I allow them to call me, how long those calls are. A temporal boundary is really effective for me. It's very powerful. And so, I will limit certain phone calls in length to a certain amount of time with certain people, actually most people. But I'll also contain myself. I'm conscious of the amount of somebody else's time that I'm taking when I call them or when I meet with them or visit with them or whatever. So they protect me and they contain me. And time boundaries can be anything, all kinds of things, any kind of activity where you're actually engaged with another person or group of people. Verbal boundaries, what's acceptable to you in terms of communications from other people, yelling, screaming, sarcasm, scapegoating, the tone of the conversation. We have to decide what's acceptable to us. And it's often not very helpful to expect other people to automatically assume, or to assume that other people automatically know what's acceptable to us and what's not, in terms of their verbal communications. Mental boundaries, this is a little bit what I was talking about earlier, in terms of codependency and our sense of reality. Mental boundaries are people kind of telling us what to think, kind of telling us, who we are in the world, what we're worth, what we can do, what we're capable of doing, what we're not capable of doing. Somehow, trying to steer our thinking in a particular direction and trying to influence us, or to, often in a negative way. And so being conscious of that, also not, for me, this was really important too, to understand that I never have to explain, defend, or justify my choices to anybody if I choose not to. And then emotional boundaries, and again, as I said, there's a lot of overlap between these, but emotional boundaries can be, some of the examples that I've used in the past are, sarcasm, shaming, some kind of emotional abuse, trying to make us feel bad for who we are or what we did or didn't do. It's one thing to say, gee, you forgot to take out the garbage last night, when it's my turn or my job to take out the garbage, versus, how many times do I have to tell you, or you're just lazy, or you're self-absorbed, you're self-centered, you only think about yourself. All of that, as far as I'm concerned, is emotional abuse. Could be verbal abuse as well, mental abuse. But having some kind of boundaries around that behavior from another person is really important. And it could be very subtle. Sarcasm, as far as I'm concerned, sarcasm is an attack. Often it's based in anger. It's a way to try to hurt another person. So looking for that, being aware of that, being conscious of that, and having some sense of what's okay and what's not okay in that regard, in the relationship. Now, the basic rule is we're going to choose boundaries that give us what's needed in order to see ourselves as safe and or comfortable in specific situations or with specific people. All right, so our boundaries can be different. I have different boundaries with different people in my life or in different situations. And, the primary boundary that we all learn when we're toddlers is the word no. You may have heard it said that, no is a complete sentence. No is a primary boundary. Stop. That's not okay. No, thank you. These are, their primary boundaries to stop somebody else's behavior from infringing on us, somebody else's words or actions, trying to protect ourselves, take care of ourselves, let them know that that's not acceptable. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have some lengthy negotiation to get your point across. But again, as we talked about earlier in this chapter, and in particular in the last chapter, often the problem with no or stop or that's not okay is we come from a place of anger. We come from a place of wanting to hurt back. We come from a combative place. And we can get out of control emotionally as a result of that. So what we want to do is learn how to say no, that's not okay, without anger. Anger is defined as hostility, aggression. I forget the exact definition that we talked about in the last chapter. But we want to be able to take care of ourselves, set a boundary, say no, that's not okay, without trying to hurt the other person, without attacking them, without feeling like a victim, without feeling justified in hurting them back. All right, so that's kind of where we sometimes, it's actually quite easy to miss the boat on that one. And remember, anger is always preceded by fear. And when I'm afraid, I see myself as vulnerable, I see myself as threatened, I may see myself as powerless in that situation, somebody having power over me, the ability to hurt me, and I can't take care of myself. I might think I'm going to lose something that's important to me, sustain some kind of injury. So when I see myself in that way, it's very difficult to say, no, that's not okay, without anger, without wanting to attack, without wanting to make somebody else wrong. So I have to change how I see myself in order to set healthy boundaries with other people that are not laced with hostility or aggression or attack or making them wrong or trying to shame them or control them or manipulate them. All right. And so the last slide for tonight on boundaries are healthy boundaries are flexible. All right. So again, this is something I mentioned in the audiobook tonight. I can, just because I have a time boundary on how long I spend on the phone with somebody, if, let's say it's 15 minutes, I don't hang up, at the end of 15 minutes. If the conversation is going well, if it's an appropriate subject matter, appropriate tone, I can continue that conversation if I choose to. Or if it's not appropriate, I don't have to wait 15 minutes and then hang up. I can nip it in the bud. And, it can be, I just remembered I've got to do this or I got to go there. It doesn't have to be, you're being inappropriate, you're making me feel bad. It doesn't have to be any of that. We can set a boundary without making somebody else wrong, without blaming them, or just say, listen, I have to go. I can't continue this conversation right now. Can I call you tomorrow or can we speak at a later date? Something like that. So we can have flexible boundaries. Healthy boundaries are also permeable. So again, I talked about this in the audiobook tonight. Most people think of boundaries as walls where we don't let anything in, and in some cases that may be appropriate. But for the most part, we want to have some permeability. We want information to pass in and out. And again, the example I gave in the book tonight, the audiobook, was, you go into your boss's office and your boss has some information about a job opportunity in a different division or department, but in the same conversation, he starts gossiping about a coworker. In that situation, it's okay to let in the information, the helpful information, but also set the boundary and say, gee, I really don't feel comfortable talking about so-and-so when they're not present. It doesn't have to be, gee, you're a jerk, you're gossiping, what's wrong with you. It doesn't have to be, that's not actually setting a healthy boundary. That's attacking, shaming, trying to make somebody else wrong. But it is appropriate to say, gee, that's not how I like to operate. I don't feel comfortable. Perfect way to do this is say, gee, I don't feel comfortable talking about so-and-so when they're not present. And that's it. It doesn't have to be any more complicated. It doesn't have to be a whole, how could you say that? How could you do that? What do you say about me behind my back? Don't have to go there. And And, we can let in what's valuable and helpful and keep out what's not. So that's permeable boundaries. And then the last thing to keep in mind is that our boundaries should be consistent. Now, this is especially important with kids. Actually, you know what? It's important in every relationship. Because the minute we can change our boundaries, we can be flexible, but if we're not consistent in enforcing those boundaries, then we're setting ourselves up and the other person for conflict and for problems. So if something is really not okay with us, it's up to us to be consistent in enforcing that boundary, standing up for ourselves in an appropriate way, letting somebody else know that their behavior is not acceptable in that situation. If we're constantly changing the rules, the other person's going to, lose interest. The other person's going to think we're, oh, he's just crying wolf, that kind of thing. And it also can build resentment in the other person, because if one day they do something and we don't say anything about it, and then the next day we attack them for that same thing, now all of a sudden they feel attacked more than they would have. And so a lack of consistency, because what I do, I still do this at times, and it always comes back and bites me in the butt, is, I will wait, I won't say anything, and then I'll say something, and I'll say it in a really, what can come across as a hostile or aggressive or real negative kind of thing. So we don't want to not say anything and then explode on the other person and then wonder why, they're upset. We're going to talk, and this is only the first half of the story of boundaries. There's a whole second half that we're going to be talking about over the next two weeks. So healthy boundaries are flexible, they're permeable, and they're consistent. Now, here's the key. If you want to know whether or not your boundaries are working, notice how you feel in that situation. So again, the big tip-off for me is resentment. If I feel resentful of another person, it's usually not their fault. It's usually my fault, not to blame myself, but I'm responsible because I have not done what I needed to do in that situation to take care of myself. So that feeling of resentment, that feeling of anger, that feeling of being taken advantage of, being manipulated, taking advantage of your good nature, whatever it might be, if that's the way you feel after an interaction with another person, I can almost guarantee, again, I'll speak for myself, when I feel that way, it's almost always because I have not set a healthy, functional boundary in that situation. I have not done what I needed to do to take care of myself. And then again, I think as I said in the audiobook tonight, boundaries with strangers, with acquaintances, that's easy compared to boundaries with the people that we love, the people who, family, friends, and lovers. Having healthy boundaries with the people we're closest to is not only often very difficult, but that's the most important place to have those healthy boundaries. The more we love somebody, the more we spend time with somebody, the closer we are, the more we need to have healthy boundaries with them. Often. And again, it's not because they're bad people, it's not because we're bad people, it's not because they're messed up people, it's not because we're messed up people. It's just because people are different, even people who love each other, who spend a lot of time together. Got to find a way to navigate, to negotiate, everything from leaving the cap off the toothpaste to, not telling them when you finish the soy milk to, whatever it is. And all of that stuff builds up over time. So having healthy, functional, permeable, flexible, consistent boundaries in those situations is, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important. Boundaries are very important with kids. What's acceptable in the house, what's not acceptable in the house. We're going to talk more about this next week. Being consistent in enforcing the rules in the house with kids, very important. as many people learn the hard way, and so on. So let's take our break. We take a 5-minute break. If you're new here, we're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to play a song. The song is Love My Life by Robbie Williams. We'll come back in 5 minutes, and then we'll work on our assignment for tonight and do some Q&A. Oh, here's the assignment for tonight. Give 3 examples of healthy boundaries that we can set with other people. So I want to hear from you guys if and when you use boundaries in your life with others. All right, so that song, Love My Life by Robbie Williams. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, I can't actually play the song because of copyright, so you got to go find a copy. But have all the lyrics on screen, great affirmations, great positive statements for you to sing along to and repeat during the week or whenever you choose to. All right, so let's go back. Let's look at our assignment for tonight. So I want to hear from you guys. Give 3 examples of healthy boundaries that you've set with other people or can set with other people. Again, here's the other thing. Don't beat yourself up if you haven't been so great with this stuff in the past. In my introduction tonight, I mentioned that I've been working on this for 25 years, and I still don't have it down in any way. So go easy on yourself. We're learning. For some of us, this is really new. The worst thing I can do is beat myself up for making a mistake in any area of my life, but in particular, how I relate to other people. So who wants to kick us off? Who wants to give some examples? Or you could just talk in general about the discussion tonight, healthy boundaries, what it means for you to have that, and so on. So who wants to kick us off? Cynthia.
I can. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thank you, everyone. I've been working on this for a really long time. And I had no boundaries when I started. I was without any boundaries. I mean, verbally, I love the image of the orange with the white part of the peel on the inside keeping me in, and the orange peel on the outside allowing some things to come in, but not everything to come in. And I've changed so much over the years, allowing myself to have containers around what I say and do, and then likewise having that that element of some things can come through the permeable outer boundary, but not everything. And it may have been Pia Melody that said about, if one person says it, it may be true or maybe not. If 2 people say it, maybe I should look at that, and that looking at it aspect has been really helpful for me over time. I'm very different than I used to be, and much more contained in a lot of ways than I once was. So it's the boundaries that I keep some people at arm's distance, and just like little boundaries of how much I'll talk with someone on the telephone, that there may be a time limit for particular people, particular conversations. So thank you so much. It's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Cool. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing too. We hopefully we're open to feedback. We're open to suggestions. We're open to positive communications from other people. Boundaries, again, it's not about keeping everybody out or all information out. And we can take feedback, but we don't have to take, if it comes with a negative tone attached to it, or negative connotations, or is somehow shaming or whatever. I always think, if one person says it, 2 people, but if 3 people tell me the same thing, then it's probably in my interest to start listening. And just be open to the idea that maybe there's something that I can change to be better in a certain way in a certain area of my life. But again, even if it's from, somebody we really trust, we have a relationship, we never ever have to take the negative, the communication, if the tone is negative, if the intention is negative, and we really don't have to take anything in that we choose not to. Even the best advice, we can decide for whatever reason that we're not going to, heed that or whatever. So, we're in control, but that also means we're responsible. So I'm responsible for taking care of myself. I'm responsible for what I let in. I'm responsible for what I let out. And I'm responsible for how I progress or how I move forward. Cynthia, if you want to say, how are your relationships different as a result of having healthy boundaries in your life?
I have more peace in myself, and just things like lower beats per minute for my heart. Over time, I can see the racing time of my heart rate has just slowed down. That things that are that visceral, because instead of being anxious and then overly involved in other people's lives, I've had better boundaries where I have people that are doing what they do, and it's fine. They do what they do, and I do what I do. And my heart rate has slowed down, so it's more peaceful. So very tangible changes.
All right, good. And I would also say, if it's not obvious, so it is hard with people we love, people we care about. Part of having healthy boundaries is not to take on their emotional state. As a codependent and as a generally compassionate person, for most of my life, I would take on other people's emotional state. So if somebody was upset or somebody was angry, I would kind of enmesh with that, and I would take that on. Often I felt responsible. So I would feel responsible if somebody was unhappy or if somebody was angry. Somehow I thought that was my fault. And having healthy boundaries is allowing other people to have their feelings and not take that on, not take responsibility for my behavior, be accountable for my words and actions, but not take responsibility for somebody else's emotional state. And, if we have children or parents, people that we love, if they feel sad, obviously we want to be compassionate, we want to be understanding, but we don't have to take that on. Let them have their feelings, we can have our own feelings. Let them be wherever they're at mentally or emotionally, physically even, and not take that on. And, that's been important for me in my life, been very helpful. So thank you for that, Cynthia. Who else? Anybody else want to chime in on the topic of boundaries? Barb?
Well, what I was going to say is that it's interesting that you're talking about it. I wouldn't say that I ever had that on my mind. And, I could go back, which you said, don't do, I go, oh, poor me, too bad I didn't know this a long time ago. It almost sounds like discipline, or I don't know, steps to success, meaning if you have boundaries, you can get where you want to go. And I certainly did not have them. It's something I got to keep in my mind. I mean, I know what you're saying. And I mean, I might have done it a little bit, but I think it has to be clearer. And I will say I did it with one person. I'm just saying, a friend that I used to say you go out to lunch with. It starts out great, and then by the time you finish, you go, that was the worst experience I ever had. So it's like this person I put a limit on. I mean, we don't go out anymore. And if even on the phone, I don't speak to her that much, that long, because that's her thing. She will do. And then towards the end, she flips it around and makes it very uncomfortable. I don't know why, but you can, and it's a wonderful experience. Maybe I'll keep that in mind, that we have the power to, eliminate that or not go through that. And that is a boundary. Yes.
Great.
Got to do it
Good.
more often. Okay.
Yeah, time boundaries, and here's the thing, guys, we want to love, if there are people in our lives that we're close to, we want to love the people in our lives without becoming enmeshed with them. When I'm enmeshed with somebody, it's hard for me to separate out my emotional state from their emotional state, my mental state from their mental state. Barbara, I'm not saying this applies to you and that person. This just came to mind.
Yeah.
And so we want to care for people. We want to be available for people. We want to be helpful. But we always want to make sure we take care of ourselves in those situations. The worst thing is trying to help somebody else, quote unquote, help them, and then end up feeling abused or rejected or neglected, and then be resentful of them. And, the truth is they may not want our help. They may not feel they need our help. They may feel that we need help, you know. So having boundaries around helping, around loving, around being available to other people, very, very important. Certainly in my life. You want to say anything else, Barb? That was good.
No, thank you. Yes, it was. And no, it's just, that's what I've got to rise. You said that in the beginning of this episode about raising your, what did you say? Your mental, something to a better spot. And, I could now feel bad that I didn't have boundaries in my life, before, because it certainly would have benefited me. And so I can't keep on going back there and say, oh, poor me, I didn't have boundaries. Why didn't I know this and stuff like that? I just have to, try to work on it now, but it does seem like it would have been a lot better if it was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, I think that's true for most of us.
Yes, so, but there were people that did it for themselves. There were people that had boundaries. I just didn't know it.
Well, that's the other thing too. We can look to other people in our lives as examples. Oh, gee, how does that person take care of themselves? It's very interesting. A 7-year-old mentioned to me the other day when I did something different that was not in the ordinary way that I interacted with him. He noticed it. So it's interesting. But we can notice how other people take care of themselves. Again, the thing that we want to avoid, there's two things we want to avoid. Number one, we want to avoid it lashing out and attacking other people because we haven't set a healthy boundary. And then, number two, we want to avoid putting ourselves in harm's way because other people don't always contain themselves. Other people can be inappropriate. Other people can be abusive, and so we want to be conscious of that. And so taking care of ourselves, first and foremost. And as I see myself as somebody who can take care of myself, as I see myself as somebody who does know how to use boundaries, there's less of that defensiveness, there's less of the getting ready for the fight, and all of that. And ultimately, letting other people, letting what other people do be about them instead of about me, not taking somebody else's negative comments personally. When I'm secure enough in myself that I don't have to take somebody else's negative comments personally, I'm free. When I can let that be about them, that's a primary boundary right there, not taking things personally. Even if it's meant to be personal, even if they think that they're right about me being wrong, I still don't, that's a mental boundary. I don't have to let their opinion of me determine my opinion of myself in that situation.
Okay. Great way of putting it. Okay. Yep. I'm going to work on that this week. Okay.
Awesome. Who else?
Peter,
Judy.
everybody. Hey, I can't wait to review this material because I always get so much more after I watch it and revisit it. Okay, you said something about written agreements. So I think this is a fascinating concept for Dee Dee since I avoid written agreements. Like I look forward to making friends with written agreements. And I don't know if even just friends have written agreements or how that works. But it makes sense that any kind of a work exchange or a work-related pay, either I'm hiring somebody or they're hiring me, should always have a written agreement. And that hasn't always been true for me. So I look forward to hearing, more about written agreements or resources about that. I think that so here's a question. My experience with it is the more vague it is, the safer I am and the better it is for me. But I think that's just not true. So somewhere along the lines, I got very confused about agreements and how to use them for my welfare and my safety. Okay, that's all I want to say. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you everybody for participating.
All right, great. Thank you, Dee Dee. Yeah, I mean, so it doesn't always have to be a formal contract or written agreement. You could just send somebody a text or an email just to kind of make sure you're both on the same page. I had this come up yesterday about what time I was meeting somebody what time I was going to. I thought we had discussed it, and I had sent an email, sent a text, and then they texted me, and it was a different time. And I went back and I looked, and I realized that I was, I was correct, but I was able to be flexible in that situation. I kind of read between the lines and got that they were feeling anxious about traffic, whatever. So I was able to be flexible. But it could be as simple as just texting somebody to just want to confirm our, appointment for today. Or, my understanding is that you're going to get paid after the work is done. Or, obviously, for business work situations, it's important to have something. Again, it doesn't have to be a 15-page contract, but having something to memorialize the understanding is really helpful. And email is great for that. Text, not as good often because it can get really drawn out. But if you meet with somebody or you have a phone conversation, follow it up with an email. Loved chatting today, loved our conversation. Here's my understanding of the agreement of the situation. Here's my proposal on how we can move forward from here. Just something in writing that at least can bring, because we only, I can only speak for myself, but I see this in so many other people. We only hear what we want to hear when it comes to having agreements and understandings with other people. We all hear what we want to hear, and we all bring our subjective interpretation of an understanding. So, the writing, some kind of memorialization of it makes it a little more objective. And at least, and it's not even to make somebody wrong after the fact and say, see, I was right and you were wrong. It can just be a way, because maybe they weren't thinking about that particular aspect of because they have a different agenda than I do in that situation. So they weren't even thinking about that. So by me following it up in writing with them can help. Because here's the other thing too. I mean, and again, I was a lawyer for 20 years. The agreement is often only worth the paper it's written on if people are not willing to adhere to that agreement. Obviously, you could sue each other and all of that, but my experience with that is everybody loses in that situation. So it's not so much that you want to have a contract that you can force somebody to live with. It's you want to have, and I talk about this in the second edition for the family contract, you want to have what's known as buy-in. You want everybody involved to buy into the agreement so they all feel like they have a stake in it. So they all feel like they're protected. So they all feel like their needs are being met. And that sometimes means sitting down and listening to what the other person, I often will say to somebody, please tell me what's important to you in this situation. So I can hear. Now that's actually a good negotiating strategy, because if I can address what's important to them and still get what I need from this situation, then we both win. But at least being willing to have that conversation, to listen to what's important to somebody else, and then find a way to memorialize it if that's appropriate and important. All right, anybody else? Thanks, Didi. We got 2 more weeks on 2 more workshops on boundaries. So there's going to be a twist. I don't know if it's going to be next week or the week after, but it's going to be next week. It's going to be a little twist. So and that twist is the most important thing that I have learned about boundaries. So, all right, we're going to wrap it up. Anybody else want to say anything?
Oh, that's not fair. You got to give us this. The cliff. Don't leave us hanging, Peter. Let us know what the cliffhanger is. Give us a week to think about it.
It's in the book. You can look for it if you want.
All right.
It's in the book, but it is important. It's actually the most important thing that I've learned about boundaries. But I'm going to give you a real life example from my own life. It's in chapter 7. I mean, you can, if you're really interested, you can read ahead. But all right, so let's play the song one more time, 3.5 minutes, and we'll come back for our final goodbyes. All right, guys, so that's it for this week. Now, again, I just want to put this back in context. You know, we're talking about healthy boundaries within the context of the broader context of forgiveness. All right, and it's my position that it's impossible to have forgiveness, to practice forgiveness, if we don't know how to take care of ourselves in our relationships. Because we're just, you know, by forgiving the other person in that situation, we're potentially just setting ourselves up for more harm. So in order for forgiveness to work, to be true forgiveness, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to know how to take care of ourselves in that relationship. So that's the broader context for this. And I think you'll see by the time, that within the next week or two, if it's not already clear, why that's so important. All right. So again, if you guys missed the meditation affirmation, you can now download it. I'm working on, I have 2 more that I'm going to do for sure. Hopefully I'll get them done this week. And we'll go from there. Anybody want to say anything as we wrap it up?
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, everybody. I love my BBT workshop. Have a great week, you guys.
You too. All right. Good night, Peter. Good night, everybody. Great night.
All right, great. Good night, guys. Remember, be bigger than you think you are today and every day. I'll see you guys next week. I want to hear all about your victories. Have a great week. Thanks for being here. Tell your friends. Only a few more workshops left till we're done with our topics.